You're listening to Living in Spain podcasts with David Wright.
Hi, my name's David Wright and welcome to another one of my podcast episodes. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about work in Spain and finding work in Spain. Now, this is one of the most popular questions that I get asked here in Spain. So I've been here 20 years now this year, 21 years almost, and I've worked for several different companies here, both English and Spanish, many different nationalities. I've worked for myself, I've run my own businesses here, and I've been self-employed. Now, I've employed people and I've been employed myself, so I've got a pretty good idea of how things work here as regards to working in Spain. So here goes. Now, when people ask me it's difficult to find work or is it easy to find work, I always say this to them: if you found it difficult to find work in your own country, then you're going to find it difficult to find work here in Spain. And it all really depends on what skills you have, and if those skills are in demand here in Spain. For example, the building industry here and all trades related to the building industry is always in demand in most countries, and here in Spain as well. Yes, it's seasonal as it is throughout the world, but there is a lot of building work going on here in Spain, and there will always be room for proper qualified tradespeople, not just jobbers. There is loads of work here in Spain, and it depends always on the area as well. For example, I'm going to use my knowledge here as building industry and what I've seen in that area of the field. So it depends where you go. So say you're going to go to Malaga, then yes, there is going to be loads of work there for British and Spanish people, and you are going to be able to earn a better income there in Spain. If you're going to live out in the hills in the countryside somewhere or in a northern part of Spain, then it's going to be more difficult. You may be more restricted to finding work in the building industry there with Spanish people. So therefore, your Spanish has got to be pretty good. Now, when it comes to going self-employed here, that's probably the best way to do it here. You can work for anybody then, not just yourself, and you will find it easier for them to want to employ you if you are self-employed here. Again, it's always having the correct paperwork here. You cannot work in Spain without the correct visas and permissions and paperwork to work here. Nobody in Spain will give you a job in any industry unless you are properly registered to work here in Spain. Otherwise, they will be fined. There are some pretty big fines here in Spain now, and they go up to around 10,000 euros for each illegal worker you have working on your building, property or premises here. So be warned, it's no good just asking somebody to give you a quick job. Even if it's your mate down the road from the pub and you want to employ him, they need to be legal and registered here, and you have to be paying their insurance, their social security payments, or they do, or you can both be fined. It's normally the employer that will be fined the worst. As I say, these fines go up to 10,000 for each illegal or unregistered worker here in Spain. Okay, so what about if you've got another industry you want to work in? Say you work in an office building, you've got some office skills or on the internet or things like that. Then yes, again, here in Spain there is work for that industry here. There's work across the board here in Spain, but you will be competing with Spanish people here, so therefore your Spanish has to be pretty good, and you have to have something a little bit extra to get ahead of everybody else here in Spain. So for example, say you want to work in the office here, administration work, then obviously you will need to speak fluent Spanish. Working on the phone is important, that you can understand phone conversation Spanish, not just saying, yeah, I can speak a bit of Spanish. That won't do, and then therefore the local Spanish people or people that can speak good Spanish will always have the upper hand over you. If you don't know how to speak Spanish, it's always a good thing before you even move to Spain to learn some basic Spanish. And I always say, learn the Spanish that is related to you and what you're going to do. For example, if you're going to be a carpenter here, learn words like wood, screws, nails, things that are related to your industry. The same if you're going to be looking for a job in a hairdressing profession or a nail technician, then you need to know salon Spanish. What are they going to ask you? How to cut your hair, how long, tinty, the colour colour, things like that. So you can learn these words on the internet. You can learn vocabulary, can't even say it in English, related to that industry that you're going to be working in. And this is what I did many moons ago, and it really did help me here get my foot in the door and practice my basic Spanish at the time. So when you first move to Spain, and if it's a thing that you need to be able to find work, whether it's straight away or in the near future, or maybe you might need to work in the future, then this is a big factor on where you're going to be moving to Spain. To start with, you want to be near other British people. If you're limited to your Spanish skills, that will give you a better chance of establishing some work here in Spain. So therefore, you need to pick out the bigger tourist industry areas here, like Malaga, Alicante, Benidorm, places like that, Murcia. There's lots of these places, so you can just check it out. It's pretty obvious, really. The bigger populated areas with populated with British people is where you're best off to start with. Now, this might not be the area that you want to move to in Spain to begin with. Say you want a place out in the country, and then you move to Malaga, for example, where there's a lot more work. You can move there and start working pretty much straight away if you've got the correct papers. And then once you build up your skill level and your clients, you can move further inland and take your business with you and maybe get some new clients. But it always helps to start off where the work is here in Spain. When I first moved to Spain 20 odd years ago, I worked about an hour inland. It was a hell of a drive every day up a motorway to get to an area where there were some British people where I could work. And this did take a toll on me after a while, driving an hour to work and an hour home at night in the heat. You know, I did have air conditioning on most of the time in the vehicles that I had, but it's a long, boring drive when it's at the end of the day and you're tired of working, you've been working all day in the heat. So yeah, take that into consideration. Think about that when you're moving here. It is a good idea to move to these areas to start with, and this is why I always say rent first. So you might want to rent in an area where there's a lot of tourist industry or where there's a lot of potential clients that can help you get started. Once you've got your foot in the door, once you're earning some money, once you've got some clients you're building up and you're building up on your Spanish vocabulary, then is the time to move to the place that you really want to move to. If you're working online and you don't have to worry about speaking Spanish, then okay, you're pretty much free to go where you want. But these are some of the things you need to take into consideration when you're thinking about moving to Spain and you need to find work. Now remember, you might be wanting to move to Spain and you might not need to work to begin with, but maybe a few years down the line you will have to find some work. So if you're out in the countryside and you need to move and you've bought somewhere, that could be a big expense you need to take into consideration. Because remember, here in Spain, when you move, you buy and sell property, there is a lot more expenses involved. It's about 3 times more expensive with the fees here, the transfer fees and the taxes buying and selling in Spain. It's not as straightforward as it is in the UK. So take that into consideration if you think maybe in a few years down the line you will need to work here. That is something you need to think about. So I hope these tips have helped. If they have, just leave a quick comment after this podcast. Thanks for listening.
If you have enjoyed this podcast by David Wright, then you will love his new books. Out now on Amazon and Kindle, packed with money-saving tips and information on living and working in Spain. Just go to livinginspainbooks.com. David also has a popular blog for expats in Spain. Come and take a look now at britishexpatsinspain.com.